and welcome to the Clarion Call. I am your host, Nisi Mathis. With me today, I have Miss Martha, and she is the author of
Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children.
And that is a very inspiring topic. Here on the Clarion Call, we are a fireside chat podcast that digs into all sorts of topics. And so today I am graced with the honor of bringing an expert in the area of children. Miss Martha, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, I'd absolutely love to, Nisi. I'm so happy to be here. You know, parenting is such a it's a hard job. And we really have to develop a thick skin. And, through parenting, we kind of have to process all the things that happen to us as children. And, a lot of times we say, well, I'm never going to do what my mom did to me or my dad. And the next thing you know, we're doing the exact same things and saying the exact same things. So yeah, parenting is really difficult. And why did I even get into this field? Well, when my son's grown now and he's a successful businessman, but when he was 4, Nisi, he was spoiled rotten and we were miserable. Everybody was miserable. His dad, me, grandparents. My mother-in-law once said to me, he'd be a lovely child if he'd just take no for an answer. Yeah. And I didn't realize that we had taught him not to take no because we would say no, but then he'd push back and we'd change it to yes. And we didn't realize that we were causing the problem. So I put everything I learned into that book because I got some information and we turned him around in 6 weeks. He became, a more cooperative, a nicer, pleasant child. And it really did change my life and turned, I was always interested in children and behavior, but this really turned my life around and our lives around. And it showed me the power of perseverance, of don't give up. If you really believe, because the people told me, they said, look, if you do this, it'll work. And I thought to myself, as long as it doesn't require me hurting my child or saying mean things to him, I'm going to do whatever they tell me, because they said it was proven. And I would try. Sometimes it wouldn't work, but I wouldn't give up. I thought, well, they told me this works, so I'm going to keep trying. And, and what I had actually done, what we had done is we had set ourselves up for failure because we had taught him by saying no and then saying yes. We had taught him to not accept no. And when we said no, he would push. Well, then I was learning to not say yes. And then he'd push for an hour, 2 hours, cry or cause a fit or have a tantrum. And then we'd give in. So the longer in the past that you've taken to then give in to your child, that's how long you're going to suffer. So realize that when you finally change, you have to stick to it this time. Make a decision and stick to it. And it really worked for us. Everything they told me to do worked. And because I tried. Now, some other parents would try the same things and they would say, how did it work for you? And they go, oh, it didn't work too good, because they would quit. They wouldn't, they would not persevere. They wouldn't stick it out. And that's pretty much life. So, the first thing I want to tell you parents, parenting's hard. Get used to it. It's not going to get any easier. And every day's a new challenge. But you know what? If you stick with it, it's all going to work out. And how do I know that? And who am I? Okay, well, besides having my own child, I was a child psychology professor for 10 years. I was a high school special education teacher for 16 years. And I've always been involved in the field of behavior modification and self-esteem. So you put that all together and you have someone who knows how to change behaviors, how to stop addictions and troublesome behavior.
Okay. So my first question, when you say that your 4-year-old would not take no for an answer, what were some of the things that you were experiencing just to make life miserable as a parent? Like, what were his behaviors that needed immediate change?
We would go to the park. Okay, it's time to leave. No, it's time to leave. No, he would say no. No, it's time to leave. We have to leave now. And we couldn't get him to go. I'd have to physically pick him up and put him in the car and he'd have a fit. He just would not take. No, it's time to stop. It's time to stop playing. We have to leave now. He wouldn't take it for an answer. Go to the grocery store. Okay, you need to stand by me. You need to so I can see you. He'd run all over the store. I'd be chasing him all over the place. we'd go to the store. He'd say, I want a toy. Okay, all right, I'll get you a toy. In fact, let me tell you this story. This is when I was finally learning to put my foot down. So we go to the store, and they told me, they said, you never give a child what he wants until you get what you want. So let's say we go to the store and he says, I want a toy. Okay, fine. When I'm done and you've behaved, we'll maybe get that toy. And don't make any promises. Well, he kept, well, I want my toy now. I want it now. I want it now. And these people told me don't do it, but of course I didn't listen. So I said, okay, I'm going to get you the toy first. But if you don't let me shop, I'm taking it back. Well, he didn't believe me, you know. So we went ahead, we got the toy. Well, then he wouldn't let me shop. He was being a real pain. I want to go home. I want to play with my toy, blah, 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 blah. He was going under the racks of clothes and just being a big pain. I said, okay, that's it. We're taking that toy back. And he didn't believe me. We walked back to the store. I give it back. The guy gives me back my money. He went nuts. Anthony went nuts. He's screaming and crying and kicking his legs and just going nuts. And I picked him up and I said, it's okay to be angry at Mommy. It's not okay to hurt Mommy. And I'm carrying him out of the mall like this because, you know, he was little legs. Luckily, they couldn't reach me. And so we walk out of the mall and people were passing these people all the way and they're all going, she should smack that kid, blah, blah, blah. You know, I would never hit my son. I never did. I just did not believe in corporal punishment at all. So we get to the car. He's still having a fit. He's going nuts. I put him in the back seat. He's still screaming and crying and jumping. And I'm sitting in the front seat thinking he's going to kick me in the head. I mean, it was very scary. And finally, I don't know, after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he tired himself out. And I said, okay, are you ready to go home? He put his seatbelt on and we were quiet. He was quiet. We were quiet. Driving home, I didn't say anything. And we got in the house and I said, you know, I think maybe you should go to your room and rest. This has been very upsetting.
So that's a good question to broach, because you have parents like me who I don't believe in abuse, and I do not believe that parents should use corporal punishment when there are any angry emotions involved or anything like that. Definitely should never touch your children when your emotions are not in control, right? But there are parents like me that believe in corporal punishment, and then there are parents like you who do not. So tell me how you were able to get your child under control. What methods did you use that don't involve corporal punishment? Because as an early education provider, I can't beat other people's children. So what do I do?
Right, exactly. Sometimes, you know what? We never did hit Anthony, but you know, there are times, sometimes you have to get a child's attention. And the only thing you can do is maybe slap them on the hand a little bit or a little, you know, a tap on the behind just to get their attention. If you feel warranted, but like you're right, because usually what happens, the kid misbehaves and we're really mad and we whack them, you know, and it's beyond what it needs. And let me tell you a story. One of my psychology students, her son was 2 and he put his shoes in the microwave. And she said to me, she said she spanked him. I said, why would you spank him? She said he did something bad. I said, how many times has he seen you put stuff in that microwave? Boxes, cardboard. He had no idea. And you would say, I'm going to warm this up. Maybe his shoes were cold. I don't know. He's a child. He wasn't trying to be ignorant or do a bad thing, doing what he's seen you do and his dad a gazillion times. And he got a spanking. So how does he process that? What happens is when you spank children for behaviors, what happens is, well, here's another example. There was one child, the baby was a year and his father was abusive. And that baby would sit, when the child and mom were together, they were okay. But as soon as he heard dad coming, he'd sit in the middle of the living room and start crying because he was afraid to do anything, because every time he did something, he got hit by the father. So what happens is we make children afraid to act. And, you know, and how many adults do you see that really don't go after what they want? They're afraid to make a mistake. I was that way for a long time, and my mother never abused me, but I still had that whole idea that I couldn't make a mistake. So what do you do instead? Well, for one thing, okay, let's use the grocery store as an example, Nisi. All right, you sweetheart, we're going to the grocery store. I expect you to walk next to me, and I expect so that all the time you need to be able to see me and I need to be able to see you, because it's just too much work for me to have to run around looking for you and I get scared. Don't talk about a bad man's going to grab them. That's too much for children. Just, you know what? I need to see you. You need to see me. Understand? Because if I can't, if I look and I don't see you, you're going to sit in the cart. Okay? All right. So then you go to the grocery store, and of course the child runs off. It's a paradise. My goodness, everything's at his level, her level. Wow, this is the greatest place in the world. And so the kid runs off. So what do? You get the kid, you go, I see you decided to sit in the cart. Put the child in the cart. Be nice. Don't have to be mean. Okay, where are the bananas? I need help. Make sure you've always got something in that kid's hand. Tell him to point to this, find this, do that, whatever, and keep the child occupied. When you get up to the conveyor belt, have him put the food on the conveyor belt. Have him drop stuff in the bag. Have him pay. Whatever. Keep that child occupied, because what happens, children get bored, and that's when the problems happen.
That's true. It's very, very true. So we do use a lot of that in early childhood education, a lot of assigning. You'd be surprised. I have everywhere from 1 to 4 years old. And even though the 1 year olds can't really even communicate properly yet, they're already putting stuff in the trash. They take out the tables when it's lunchtime. They can put the chairs under the tables. They can take out their mats. They can put their blankets on their mats. And the accomplishments, the reactions I get from their accomplishments is great. I always get comments like, oh, how are you able to get my child to do such and such? They do not do this at home. And I'm like, you just let them do it. You just let them do it. And the little clap when they do stuff right for themselves. And so I had to redirect one time, and I was like, we don't do this. This is something that we don't do. And he was so shocked that I had to discipline or use that tone of voice that was different from all of the reward, that he kept clapping his hands at me because he was trying to tell me that I did a good job at something. Tell me I did a good job. Give me like you were saying, give me something to do so I can get this back, because I need this back. So yes, that's an amazing thing. How do you empower teachers? What were some of the tips and tricks that you were teaching when you were teaching child psychology in university?
Okay, just like what you said, have the children do as much as possible themselves, and don't expect perfection, and appreciate them every step of the way. Oh my goodness, I see you're tying your shoes. Well, you've got one lace right. You put one lace right over there. Good, you've got a good start. That's a good start. Oh, good, I see you put, your dish in the sink. Good, that's a really good start. Now let's wipe down the table. Each step of the way, not for a completed event. You don't wait to praise someone playing basketball when they make a basket. You praise them. Oh, good. You approach the basket right. Oh, good. You're getting closer. Oh, good. You've got you've got the ball in your hands correctly. You've got to give them that endorsement and attention and reinforcement for every step of the way. You want your child to brush their teeth. Well, for one thing, they need to be able to get up to the sink, so they have to have a step stool for the sink. How can your child brush their teeth if they can't even reach the sink? So things like that. And also, if you're potty training, get a Betsy Wetsy doll. Get one of those dolls that goes potty, and then let your child teach the doll to potty. Put the potty, Boys too. And reinforce them. Okay, reinforce the child for potty and reinforce the doll for potty. But the doll doesn't get the M&Ms or whatever it is you give it. The child gets it for whenever the doll does the right thing, or even their teddy bear. Okay, put your teddy bear on the potty and slip a Tootsie Roll or something in there. Oh, good. Look, he went potty. Just, little things like that. There's a book called Potty Training in a Day, which was written like 50 years ago by two men that worked at an institution for developmentally delayed children. If you can potty train a developmentally delayed child in a day, you can do it with anybody's child.
Yes.
But if it doesn't work in a day, hey, give it some time, all right? Just work up to it. And the majority of child abuse happens around toilet training accidents. Children really, until they're at least 2.5, even 3, don't have the muscle control to enable them to hold their bowel movements or even their urine at times. So you really want to keep that in mind. And of course, they're going to have accidents. So don't be angry, but you should always have the child help you clean the accident. Help the child do that. If they wet their bed at night, well, then they have to help you change it. Now, if you might not have it that night, put the child back to bed on a dry area, but then in the morning say, oh, we got to wash the sheets. But don't embarrass the child. Just go, oh my goodness, We've got to get this done. This happened. Just like if they spill their milk, Maria
I
Montessori.
think that because there are so many children that develop potty training early, it gives parents misconceptions as far as when the actual age for that skill really is. And so, since you've done child psychology, when would you say is the actual age that a child should begin mastering potty training?
Well, each child is different, but do not start before 2.5. Do not, do not, do not. And you can ask the child. You ask the child, do you have to go potty? And see if can they hold it. Can you hold it? Keep working on that, because they'll develop that ability, but until their muscles have to be ready. Little people aren't just little people. They're growing. Their muscles are becoming stronger. It's just like when you go to the gym and you work out with the weights. Their little muscles are growing and getting stronger. And there are some things they can't do no matter how much you can't give a 1-year-old a pencil and they're not going to have a smooth script. It's just not possible. They don't have that. They don't have the small, fine motor skills. But you can still get them started in drawing and writing and having a pencil in their hand. So, you want to try. My mother claimed, and of course she was wrong, but she claimed I was potty trained at 9 months. Please. I'll tell you, how I was potty trained at 9 months? I spent half my day on a little potty.
No. I have my stepfather. He is from Panama. And so when I was potty training my children, because I was staying with my mom for a while when I was starting over, and my youngest was 18 months, 2 years old. And I think she had had an accident and I was talking her through it. So I used the times method. So I would take her every so often just to get her in the habit.
Right.
And he walked around the house and he was like, yeah, in Panama, all the kids are potty trained by the time they're 9 months old. And I'm just doing this in my head. Like, I don't think she was walking by this. Like, I think she was still being picked up. And so you have parents that they'll bring the child in. And I do offer potty training as a part of my in-home daycare, but it's more of the timed method, and it's more to get the child used to going to the restroom as opposed to mastery of skill. I don't expect any of my children to really start mastering that skill until they're 3.5 years old. And so with one little boy, he mastered that skill in about 6 months. Like we put the pull-ups on him, and now he's in underwear and he's rocking and rolling. Like every once in a while, he'll have an accident during nap time, but for the most part, he's mastered that skill.
That's crazy.
And so the other parents are looking at this one child and they're like, what's going on with my child? What's going on with your child? Like it's not everybody doesn't, and not everybody responds to that method. That's just the method that I use because it's easy at the center that I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that when it comes down to mastery of skills and when it comes down to things like tantrums, I know that tantrums don't stop with terrible twos. So what methods would you employ with someone who's, say, in kindergarten and showing these behavioral problems, or the 3rd grade, the 6th grade? What are some things that parents can employ when the child has more cognitive ability to be able to communicate what's going on with them, but they still can't fully communicate what's going on with them?
Well, that's really a good question. Adults have tantrums. Okay. How many times have you been driving your car and the person in front of you is going too slow? Yeah. And you're yelling and screaming and what the heck's going on? Why can't you drive? Blah, blah, blah. And of course the children hear that. So, adults have tantrums too. And a lot of times kids have tantrums because we show it to them. We show them how. So you can distract, you can distract. The number one thing is stay calm. Stay calm. And, I have tantrums, but to myself. Nobody else suffers, but my computer's too slow. What's going on with this computer? I have little tantrums. Why didn't this work? Oh no. Oh, now I got to go get gas. Blah, blah, blah. I got to let the dog out. I'm in the middle of something. The dog's got to go out now. That's just, is a human nature. I don't know, but nobody suffers but me. That's it. And that's the main thing. If you're going to have a tantrum, you keep it to yourself. Don't make anybody else suffer because it's not their fault. And even if it is their fault, to have a tantrum isn't going to make anything better. So when kids misbehave and do the wrong thing and have their little tantrums, you can try distracting. You can just try to ride it out. You can say, it's okay for you to be mad, but it's not okay for you to make everybody else miserable. And and really reinforce that point. Okay, I understand you're angry. I understand you're not getting what you want, but you're not going to get what you want by screaming and crying. So when you're calm, we can talk about it. But then other than that, let it go. Don't keep going on and on and on. When you're calm, we'll talk about it. But until then, I can't talk to you. And make sure that you're calm too when you talk to the child. So put it that way. And then sometimes you already know they have to be separated. Their behavior is so egregious. I had a child at the high school one time. She was having one of her crazy things, turning desks over, just going nuts. And you know what? The whole rest of the class had to leave the room until security could get there and get control of her.
So
Sometimes you
you
can
didn't
remove
make
the
her
child,
leave,
and that's the best
everybody
way.
else left?
Yeah, everyone else had to leave because she was so out of control and it was dangerous. She had pencils in her hand and she was dangerous. So yeah, you call security and then everybody else gets safe. Then they come in and take care of it in that instance. Now, there were times too where she'd start having a fit and I knew what was going on and I would take her out in the hall. Okay, let's talk about this. But it kind of depended on at what point she was at in her tantrum. So, you really don't want to encourage them, but you don't want to another tantrum. Just go, look, sweetheart. When you're calm, we'll talk. But until then, go about your business. Do something else. Just make sure they're safe. Or distract them. Hey, is that Barney? What? You're at the grocery store. They're screaming, oh, is that a mouse? Did I just see a mouse?
What part did your faith, your personal faith, play into your decision to work in child psychology, your book, the time length that it took to get your son on the right path? What part did your faith play in all of this?
I have a strong belief in God, and I know that everything will work out. It doesn't seem that way sometimes. When our basement was flooded a couple weeks ago, and I'm cleaning up all that water and we're fixing the problem. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way, but everything's going to work out because it's going to take time. But this is just one of those things, and of course we're being tested. And how do we pass? How do we pass the test? Do we do what needs to be done, or do we sit down and go, "Oh, poor me, I can't fix this. My printer isn't working." So I thought, you know what? I'll just take it apart and see what it is. And I took it apart, and I'm in the middle of fixing it. So we'll see. We'll see when I put it back together. But yeah, you know what? Life is a series of challenges. And that old thing, sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. We have to realize just because we want it doesn't mean we should get it.
It's true.
And just because I believe it doesn't mean it's true. So yes, I know everything's going to work out, even though in the meantime, and I know some people who, okay, they lost their job and they were when they hated their job, they hated their job. So every day they'd come and go, I hate my job, I hate my job. Well, then they'd lose their job, They'd be like, oh my God, I lost my job. What am I going to do? When in actuality, it's the one thing they really wanted. And then they start crying every day. Oh my God, when am I going to get another job? Blah, blah, blah. Well, you're going to get another job when God tells you it's the right time. And maybe you need to learn how to interview. Maybe you need to learn how to persevere and stick with it and stop being a big crybaby. Maybe somebody needs to see your example. When I talk to the ladies at the jail, I go every Monday and talk to the addicts and alcoholics. And I tell them, I say, you know what? You being here, God put you here for a reason. And I don't know what you did, and that's not our business. But somebody needs the information that you're learning and the strength you're gaining. One woman got put in isolation, I think it was 10 days. And in isolation, you're only out for 1 hour and all they give you is a Bible. And she told us about it. And I told her, I said, do you realize how few people could come out of that sane? You walked out of that still sane, still with a good attitude, and still knowing that tomorrow is another day, that there's hope. People need that. People need hope. Your kid's rotten, and every day the teacher calls and says, he did this and he did that. And you feel hopeless. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm the worst parent in the world. Well, the truth is obviously you need to learn some new skills, as does your child, as does the teacher in some cases. But we all have to work together. I remember I used to go to my son's school every year and sit in the classroom for a couple of hours and see what was going on. That I learned a lot through that. And also, let me give you a tip. If you have children in school, don't ask them how was school. That's like, how was work today, dear? Oh, yeah, it was fine. So don't ask them how was school. Just say, hey, what was the best thing that happened to you today? And then let them tell you, and then you share yours. What was the worst thing? I used to ask that with my son, and I knew everything that was going on, Nisi. I knew who misbehaved. I knew who the teacher was mad at. And he would also tell me about these wonderful books they read. They had a book called It Could Always Be Worse, a Caldecott winner. Anthony came home in third grade and told me all about that book. It was the greatest. It really is a fabulous book because it always could get worse. It was such a good life lesson.
I want to ask you because I read through your bio and the fact that you helped author Chicken Soup for the Soul
I'm
cookbook,
sorry, I didn't hear you.
the Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook, helping to author that blew my mind. That book saved my life. I was a depressed teenager and I was walking through Kroger one day and I would always go to the book section and this guy just hands me the book. He he takes it out his shopping bag and he handed it to me. And so I walked to my car with Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook. So I've read that book. It saved my life. It pulled me out of a major depression. To find out that you helped with that is completely amazing to me.
Thank
How
you.
did you
I have a story in
how
there.
did you help author that book? What gave you that opportunity? What role did you play?
Well, Jack Canfield used to do self-esteem seminars early on before Chicken Soup for the Soul. So I attended his seminars. They weren't called Chicken Soup for the Soul, they were self-esteem seminars. And then after the first book came out, Chicken Soup, they wanted to do a second one and they thought, well, we'll do a cookbook. And everybody that they knew, they said, why don't you write a story? So I did. And at the time I was a substitute teacher. And my story was a fish, Lord, I need a fish. And this is a good story for parents too. Children have goals. And a lot of children, they are very discouraged. And this was a kindergarten classroom, and I was substituting as the art teacher. And one little guy, we were drawing a fish. It's very easy to draw a fish. Just two lines, basically, is all it is, two curved lines. And immediately, I showed him how to do it, and he just started crying. I can't draw a fish. Well, that's called hopelessness. What he's display of inadequacy. And obviously, in his life, he felt that no matter what he did, it was never good enough. And he felt very, very hopeless. And that was very upsetting to think that, at 5 years old, he was already feeling that way. And I knew that I couldn't give him a lot of attention for that because then they get attention for feeling inadequate and that perpetuates it. So I said, well, sweetheart, why don't you look at your classmates and watch what they do and then see if you can do that. And then I went off and talked with other students and went to help other people and watch what was going on. Well, next thing you know, 5 minutes later, he's yelling, a fish, I drew a fish, I drew a fish. And he was just as happy as a clam and he had a cute little fish there. And, and of course, wow, that's fabulous. I knew you could do it, blah, 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 And that's another thing that the whole hope, to have, well, you know what? I've got this child here. I can't let him believe that he's inadequate. I can't sit here and try to baby him through it. Oh, now, hon, you can draw a fish. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Because that would give him undue attention for not doing what he needed to do. He needed to draw a fish. He needed to try. He needed to try. And he didn't even want to try. Oh, I can't. He wouldn't even try. Well, sweetheart, watch what they're doing. And then he did. And he won. So you know what? That's a really good lesson. Let's face it, everybody, you're gonna fail 100 times more than you succeed. Okay? Every day, a gazillion things go wrong. Little things. So don't focus on that. Focus on the gazillion things that go right. Did you get out of bed? Good. Were you able to get out of bed? Could you get your clothes on? Is the water, did you turn on the water? Did it run out of the tap? And when you flush the toilet, did it flush? You got to think about these things every single day because those are things 100 years ago nobody had. Nobody had a hot water heater 150 years ago. Imagine how they lived. There used to be outhouses. You used to have to walk out of your house to go to the bathroom. Imagine in the winter in Michigan and you had to get up at 2 a.m. and go potty. Okay?
Nope.
Now, So our lives are so easy compared to what they were, yet my computer's slow. Oh my goodness, I've got work to do. The computer's so slow today. We don't have a good perspective on what's real. There were people who only 3 out of 100 people survived the Holocaust. 3 out of 100. But those three, and the reason they survived is they had a purpose. I'm going to live to tell the story. I've got to see my mother again. I've got to see my children, whatever. Those three. And they lived it's not, we can't even talk about a hard life. That's unimaginable. And they still left, got out of there, were rescued, and went on to have families and children and grandchildren and get jobs. Now, if they can do that, you and I can deal with whatever it is that's happening to us, the aggravating problems of the day. So think about that all the time, and also get your gratitude journal going. Is your child healthy? Is your child, able to give you a hug? I follow a child, Sophia, on Instagram, and she has cerebral palsy every single day. She has braces on, and they are constantly doing physical therapy with her. She has to walk, she has to jump, she has to, and every single day, the parents and the child. Now, that is faith. If we do this, it's gonna work out. And Sophia's now walking pretty regularly, and it's because they never gave up, and because they had that faith, and because they put their life in perspective. Things could be worse. How can we make things better?
So before we close out today's episode, you've already pretty much started, but my final question would be, you raised your son a few decades ago. To the parents who are raising children in this very toxic culture and environment, what would be the best advice that you could give a mom or a dad today?
Do your best to avoid as much television as you can. Don't put a device in your child's hand, because that's just distracting them. And we have an explosion of attention deficit now. And, I even find myself, I'm scrolling Facebook. I'm an addict. Time yourself, time your child, put timers on and say, okay, now we got to turn it off. Now it's time to go outside. Now it's time and make plans to do other activities besides constantly being entertained. And in the car, don't turn on the movie in the car. Ask the child, look for a red car, look for a stop sign, look for a J on a license plate. Use that time. Oh, what do you think's going to happen at school today? Who's your favorite, who's your favorite friend at school? Who's your favorite teacher? What do you like best? Just to have conversations. What do you like best about church? What do you like best about this? Engage your child in more conversations and less entertainment.
Some good, solid advice right there. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Clarity Call today. We really appreciate your time, your expertise, your wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Thank you so much for pouring into all of the parents that are here on the Clarity Call and all of the parents out there in YouTube land. Say the name of your book one more time.
Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. And you can find me at marthaburich.com. I give parenting lessons. We have a 4-week course. Boom, let's get that worst behavior out of the way. If we can't eliminate it completely, we're going to make a good dent in it, and you're going to develop a new relationship with your child and even the other people in your life.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Do you want to leave any social media handles?
On Facebook, Martha Burich on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Then I have my own website, marthaburich.com. And if you want to join my parenting, I have a parenting group on Facebook, Mastering Child Behavior. And then also I have a YouTube channel at Martha Burich Parenting.
I am your host, Nisi Mathis. This has been the Clarion Call. And until next time, remember that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Thanks. Have a great day.